6 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. So let's go ahead and get this started because we have a few items on the agenda. Let's leave it at that. Mary, you want to lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we appreciate you being here tonight, recording the meeting for us as usual, so good deal. The first item on the agenda, as far as business is concerned, is the approval of the agenda. If everybody's had a second to look it over, I know Stacy had already emailed it out. I don't think there were any changes to the agenda that she had sent, but.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
A second, even.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 4-0 carries, thank you. So, the next item is, approval of minutes. You may recall that when, Jenny left, the minutes were locked on her computer and Stacy had to go through several hoops to get IT to turn them over to her. So that's why we're behind on approving several of them.
Yeah, it was the October minutes that were on her drive from her computer, so IT had to go in and search and get it, email it to me. So we've got October 1st, 2024, November 5th, 8th, and 12th, 2024, January 7th, 2025, and then we haven't met except for our election night and approval of the election results, so we have quite a few.
Right. So we will begin with the October meeting minutes. Those, all of the meeting minutes were sent via email too, so everybody hopefully had a chance to look them over. I didn't see any recommendations for any changes to the October 1st, 2024 meeting. So starting with that, do we need to do individually, Madam Attorney, or we can do them all? Okay. All right, so starting with that, we will say that that one appeared to be correct. Then the next one was November 5th. Again, everybody have a chance to review that. Okay, and I didn't see any recommendations for any changes on those. November 8th, 2024. Becky's flipping over. Got anything? Becky, are we good on that?
No, I'm just flipping them over.
Okay, all right. Everyone else had a chance to review? Okay, all right, so we're good with those. How about November 12th? Everyone had a chance to look at those meeting minutes? Okay, no changes, okay? January 7th was a regular meeting. It was brief, but we had the meeting, went over a few things, and everybody had a chance to review those minutes. Okay. Any changes? Okay. March 18th, 2025. That was the night of the election. I don't believe we actually had any major business. We sat together as a panel though and opened absentee ballots, which is why obviously we had called a meeting. So no changes, anything there. Okay. The final one is March the 21st. I do believe we did have one edit to those, and it was on the number of, Ed had suggested which number's correct.
The number that I had on there is correct, because that we have to go by the number that was on the tape, and
Okay.
the number that was on the tape was 860. Well, if you look at the numbers and yes or no selections, it totals up to 859, but we had that one ballot where somebody didn't make a selection and then ran it through the scanner. So we go with the 860 number because that's what's on the tape.
Okay, all right. Are there any questions on that, those minutes? All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve all of the above listed meeting minutes from October 1st, November 5th, November 8th, November 12th of 2024, then January 7th, March 18th, and March 21st of 2025.
I move that we accept the minutes.
Sorry, did you start saying that?
Okay, well, it was both, I think it was at the same time,
Then I'll
so.
second.
Okay, so Becky, and then a second, all right, any additional discussion about approving any of those minutes? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, carries 4-0, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is new business, and we are going to talk about the June special election. Stacy?
We have a June special election that's statewide for Public Service Commission. But I have been in discussion with the clerk for the city of Nelson, and they had a city council member that moved, and they have an unexpired term to fill, as well as they will be having an election in November that includes a seat that they had a council member pass away. So right now they're operating on only 3 council members. So all 3 council members has to be at every single meeting or they don't have a quorum. So they have requested to have a special election in June to fill an unexpired seat. And then they will have the rest of their elections in November with the municipal election. So I need a vote from the board to conduct a special election in June on behalf of the city of Nelson to fill an unexpired seat.
Can you clarify for us, if you would, we have the election going, the statewide election in June. Will this be like their own separate cost?
It'll be in conjunction, well, no.
Okay, that's what I was getting
So this
at.
election will be in conjunction with the statewide election.
Okay.
And because we have all 12 precincts that are going to be operating on election day, the cost that I will charge the municipality will be minimal.
Okay,
Because we can't charge them for having the precinct open and staffing it, because we're already
Already
doing
there.
that. So it's just being held in conjunction with. Now, any separate advertising that I do for them, I will bill to the municipality.
Okay.
But it's gonna be very minimal on the reimbursement that we get back for holding this special election because it is in conjunction with the statewide election.
very good. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. So why don't they wanna fill both of the empty seats
Because
with the
they're-
June election?
They're already going to have an election for the other seats that are up in November. So if it were not for that, they would probably do both seats, but they are not really concerned about filling the seat that's up for election in November, because if they do, that person's gonna have to turn around and run again in November. They just need to fill the unexpired seat as of right now.
Gotcha.
And that one won't be up in
No, that one was actually just went into office in January.
January, okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to hold a special election for Nelson in June to fill the unexpired seat?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a
Second.
okay, do I have any additional discussion? All those in favor? All right, carries 4-0. Thank you, and good luck, Nelson. Okay. Next item under new business is our 2026 precinct discussion. It has been something that Stacy and I had already been discussing briefly, because we had already been made aware by the school system about needing to look at the possibility of moving the precincts out of the schools. But there's a couple of other issues I think that we've also have come to light that we need to look at as well. And this is the time, we've got to start planning this now to be able to get notices and everything out about the relocation of precincts. So Stacy, what have you determined for us to consider?
So, last year we started working on our polling place agreement, and we never actually had it signed, because whenever I went to meet with this Board of Education first to talk to them, that's when they let us know that they actually wanted us the end of last year to be out of the schools. But because they ended up wanting to do the e-splosh for this year, they decided to let us stay another year, which was beneficial to my office because it gave us a little bit more time to prepare for this. But going into 2026, we will need to make any changes to precincts that we need to make all at one time instead of just moving out of the schools and then worrying about what to do with other precincts later on. I think it'll be best for us just to go ahead and address it all at once. And then that way we can get voters adjusted to it all at one time instead of doing it, at different times. But also, we didn't get the other polling place agreements signed at that time because we didn't want them expiring at different times. We wanted them signed all at once to be able to expire all the same year as well. I've included in your binder some information on precinct changes. And now we're not changing precinct lines. We're keeping the precinct lines the way they are. What we're changing is the polling places. And from the information that we have found, you have several different steps that you have to take when changing a polling place. But we need to get notice out 120 days prior to a primary. And we have a primary coming up in May of next year. So as soon as the November election is over with, this is something that we immediately have to start working on. So that's why I want us to go ahead and start preparing now, start the discussion on it, and get everything in line that we need to get so that way as soon as the November election's over with, we can do whatever is necessary for us to get these changes made and to notify the voters. But Hill City is one of our locations that is going to have to be moved out of the school. And Woodstock Church has already agreed to allow us to come there, which is wonderful. I haven't reached out personally to Woodstock Church, but the superintendent for the Board of Education goes to church there. He's the one that actually reached out to them because he goes to church there and they agree.
On 53.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. So it wouldn't be moving it very far, it's right down the road. So that one is already, they approved us. We've just got to do what's necessary for us to move it. I need to go out there before I say yes and just see it with my own eyes. But I think that facility, will work for the needs that we have. Tate School is one of the schools that will be moving. We have two options. I have not reached out to either one of these, but when looking at the buildings in the area that it could possibly go, Cool Springs Church has a facility that we would be able to use if they would allow us to, and it has a nice parking lot, that would have room for plenty of voters. I don't think that they do the preschool there anymore, so we wouldn't have to worry about days of an election with children being in school there. And then the Tate Fire Station, the new one that they built off of Worley Crossroads, that would be another option that would be in that precinct that we could possibly use, if the county would let us. So those are two options.
Tate Fire Station.
What about Tate United Methodist Church?
I've never seen, what the inside of it looks like, so I'm not sure, what their fellowship hall might look like to allow us to do that. And I know where the church is, but I haven't paid much attention to the parking.
It's right next door, obviously, to Tate Elementary, and not that I think that we have any major issue with our parking for voters to be able to go there, but I know that traffic flow wise to get past Tate, to be able to get into that parking lot in the morning and in the afternoon, you're gonna have people probably give up waiting in line because traffic is so backed up flowing in and out of Tate Elementary. At least coming from the four-way stop in Tate. Like you can't get to the church because you have to sit in the school traffic.
Right.
So that may not be, it's a possibility. I would probably put it third on the list. I just don't think getting past the school traffic in the morning and the afternoon is necessarily gonna give a flow of traffic for our voters to get to that location, so. Yeah.
How many people voted? Tate?
A lot.
You have the list
It's
of
in the back
registered
of the thing,
voters.
3205.
Yeah, 3,206 is the number
Is
of
it six?
registered
I said
voters for
five.
that precinct.
The other place I thought of, Stace, is, I mean, this would be a commercial business, but, you know, maybe they'd be willing to do it, is the Tate Mansion.
I don't
You
know.
know, they've got a huge,
Yeah.
they have a gigantic,
The thing about that
facility.
is they would probably require us to pay to use their
I
facility.
don't know, I mean, maybe she's civic-minded,
Ms. Mann is usually pretty easy to work with.
yeah. I mean,
But,
I don't know, just a option in case these others don't work out.
Mhm.
And I think most of their wedding business is on the weekends, if I
Right.
understand correctly, so. I think I may have a contact at Cool Springs, cause
I've
that's.
got a
where-
contact at Cool Springs. I just have not reached out to them yet because I wanted to present it to the board before I actually started reaching out to any individual about a possibility. I wanted to make sure the board was okay with it.
I mean, obviously, the fire station, we have contacts for them too,
Yeah.
so, yeah. Okay.
Refuge, the junior high, is another school that we'll be having to move out of. One of the options of moving Refuge would be a possibility of the First Christian Church, which is still on Refuge Road. One thing about that is it is outside of the Refuge precinct, but it does state that if you have a precinct that does not have an acceptable place to have a polling place, you can move the actual polling location outside of the precinct line, and it would only be about 2 miles from where the school is now. They have a gym, and they have already said that they would approve us to use their gym as our facility for a polling location. The parking lot there, is rather big, so I don't think we would have an issue with parking. Another option that we have considered, and we have not reached out to them, it was just a possibility, was Georgia Mountain Hospice. They have a separate building that is kind of a meeting room. That would be inside of the precinct of Refuge, and that could be a possibility.
Okay.
But we would have to get approval, from probably Gina Penley to be able to use that.
What about the rec center?
We don't want to use the rec center because we have preached and preached and preached that you only vote at the rec center on early voting,
Okay.
no voting on election day. And if we decided to use that as a precinct for election day, every single person at all 12 precincts would still try to come there and vote on election day. So we tried just not to use that for anything but early voting.
Unless it passes where early voting is then at your office, and then we have that as an option.
I think that one's gone.
Is it
I
gone?
think, who knows?
Thank goodness our office is not big enough for that.
There's still 3 more days.
Right, but yeah, so we had tossed that around, obviously, but for the reasons Stacy has stated, it just, I think it would cause too much voter confusion.
Yeah.
And, cause everybody would think they could go to the rec center, and then they'd be calling, and it'd be, I just think a lot of confusion and a lot of work to send people in the right direction. They're not gonna understand why they could early vote there but not vote there regular. It's, I say steer clear if we
I say if
can.
we can just keep,
Mhm.
beating the dead horse about you only vote there for early voting, like that will be our best bet.
Mhm.
Um, another building that we're going to have to get out of eventually, I mean, we don't have a time frame, is the Appalachian precinct, which is at Gypstick, the old high school. That is owned by the school system. And I have been told that eventually, probably later this year, they're gonna put it up for sale. So I just see if they sell that building, we're not gonna be able to use it, and we're gonna have to move that precinct. So if we're already moving precincts going into 2026, I just see that it would probably be a good change to go ahead and find somewhere else for it to go. By doing the research of Appalachian is not even in, or the Gypstick is not even in Appalachian's precinct. It's one of those buildings that they didn't have anywhere to put the polling place inside of Appalachian's precinct because it's prominently residential. So they, did what they needed to do when they established that precinct to put it in a location, that could house it. And that's how it ended up at the old high school. Some of the options that we are considering for Appalachian they still would not be, in the Appalachian precinct, but I think it would be a good, place to house would either be the library. They have that room when you walk into the right that we could, if they would allow us to use, that we could put it in there. And the parking lot is a decent size. It is a county building, so that is, we have that on our side, about using the library. Or Mountain Zion Church has a fellowship hall that would be large enough if they would allow us to use it as a precinct. So those are.
Is the Hazel Mosley Center that is owned by Jasper Housing Authority just down the road from Jasper Fire in that zone actually as well? Appalachian, would that
That's City of Jasper.
Hazel Mosley?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew it was one of the two.
The Chamber, City of Jasper. I mean, I went through. We were trying to think of several.
So, because you said Mount
locations.
Zion, so I thought of Hazel Mosley Center right there as a possibility.
And
So-
the thing about it, the way the Appalachian precinct is, so you have Appalachian precinct on the map, and then there's the top half of Appalachian, which goes up Burnt Mountain Road, and then there's this municipal precinct, the City of Jasper precinct, dead in the middle of Appalachian, which cuts the bottom half and the top half of Appalachian off from each other, and then you've got the bottom half of Appalachian. So the majority of it is all residential, and everything that would be commercial structures or churches or buildings that would be able to house us using it as a polling location are all in what's considered the precinct of Jasper, because it's everything in the middle.
Right, okay.
And so do we have to, I mean, does the city of Jasper have to have its own precinct
Yes.
separate from the county?
Yes, because it's a municipality.
While we're talking about moving, maybe Hazel Mosley Center for the City of Jasper would be better than their current location too.
Well, I really don't feel like we had any issues during this
Okay.
last election with the City of Jasper precinct.
The only thing I will say is I know from being over there a time or two, was that hallway is very tight, and I know it is handicap accessible. I just actually wonder about the level
The
of
parking
accessibility.
is not great,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
thing about it is it's a municipality's precinct, so
Mhm.
it would take us working with the municipality on changing the location. And
It's
that's
just
where they
it's-
chose to have it.
It's for something to think about, like I say, if it gets to the point where we run into more problems, is like I say, Hazel Mosley Center would probably be a good location, it's right there, but anyway.
Where is that?
It is, what is the name of the street? Burton Street, give me a minute, it'll come to me. So if you were to go, if you were heading on, heading up to North Main Street on Old 5 and turned right by Revolution Church, that's called Burton Street. You have Jasper Fire on there, and then you have some of the Housing Authority apartments, and Hazel
I
Mosley
see.
Center's right smack in the middle of those on the left-hand side,
Okay.
so.
And one
So-
discussion that we've had about the Jasper municipal polling location is, there's nowhere that says it, but you would just think that they would want to keep it in a City of Jasper owned building, because the City of Talking Rock has their polling location at their city hall, the City of Nelson has it at their city hall. Jasper used to be at their city hall, but they moved it to their municipal courtroom. So you would think that they would want to keep it in a city-owned building because it is a municipal precinct.
Okay.
And then the last precinct, and we have talked about what to do with Yellow Creek for a while now. And we've we've pondered on moving it to another location. And the more that I thought about it, and that's why I included the voter totals for each precinct in your packet. Right now, we have 4,296 people registered to Yellow Creek. That's our largest precinct. It keeps going up with every election. People are moving into the area. We have Big Canoe subdivision up there. We have a lot of subdivisions being built in that area, new construction. So I foresee that it's only going to continue to grow. And we've thrown around different options about possibly where to move it because the fire station that currently houses the polling location is a very small, place. So what we were looking at was to find something that would house, possibility of that many voters. And the more I thought about it, the more I was thinking eventually what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to split that precinct because it's getting so many voters. And if we're going to split it, if we split it now when we're doing these precinct changes and add an additional precinct, we can keep half of these voters at Yellow Creek and not have as many people voting there and create another precinct with only half as many voters. And we wouldn't have to worry about moving it and then a year or two down the road possibly having to split it again. We have talked when we were originally talking about moving the precinct for Yellow Creek to either talking to Foothills Church about the possibility of using their location or Trinity Church. If we were to split the precinct and keep a portion of the Yellow Creek voters at the fire station on Yellow Creek Road and add an additional precinct, I would have to talk to the, who would draw our precinct lines, the appropriations office?
It's the General Assembly, the Legislative Apportionment Office.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on her name. She's been there for like 25 years.
Yes, and it's right on the tip of my tongue, I can't think of it. But
Gina.
yes, Gina. But what, I don't know how they would draw the line, if they would keep everybody, from the boundary line of Tate all the way up to Marble Hill at the Yellow Creek precinct, and then do everybody from Marble Hill all the way over, to the Sharp Top precinct line. If they would make that the new precinct, I would have to talk to them about, how that would be done. But I just think that would be a good option. And it would allow us to still use the facility of the fire station, but not have the problem of so many people coming in at one time.
Right.
Because any time that you have a precinct that has over 2,000 people registered to it, if there's any point in time that voters have to wait in line for an hour, then the superintendent is required within 60 days to create a new precinct or
Purchase more.
change,
Yeah.
change boundary
machines
lines.
and all that.
Yeah,
Within what?
60
Within 10
days.
60 days.
60.
Basically for the next
After
election.
the election's over.
And we already, especially for the presidential election, we already send out as many machines as that little building can hold, and 8
Right.
is all the machines it can hold, and that's really, stretching it. So this would actually require us not to have to send as many machines to Yellow Creek, because we would only have half the number of voters, and then whichever precinct, location that we were able to go with, we would only have to send, enough machines. It's 500, one machine for every 500 voters. So if there's 2,000 voters, I wouldn't have to send more than maybe 5 machines to each one of those precincts, where now we're having to send 8 and really could use more, but we can't hold it in that precinct.
I think I'm sorry, Ray. Go ahead.
I said, he's gonna be required to, hire in more or get more poll workers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't feel like that would be an issue.
I think my only concern is what area we're gonna see the most growth. Because if you look at your numbers and then we're gonna leave half potentially at Yellow Creek. And we are still looking at an area that is growing, which one's gonna grow faster? Like, because then we're gonna end up having to split again, or, you know, like, I think, and I know we're not in charge of the dividing lines. I'm just thinking out loud about making sure, I like the idea of splitting. I think that probably is, like you say, with the growth. I just don't know, like, how the lines will get divided and where the area of growth is. That would be a concern for me. that-
Gina is,
She's amazing.
she
Okay.
is,
So would she
Incredible
at
at
least
that stuff.
listen to what you had to say about, like, we've got neighborhood potential over here, so don't put, okay.
Yeah.
Those are conversations you can have with
she
her.
looks at all the projections, like
Okay.
racial, age,
Yeah.
neighborhood, yeah.
And
Okay.
we've dealt with her in our office before because we don't have, or at the time, whenever we were redistricting after the census in 2020, we didn't have a GSI person in our office, so we worked with her. Luckily, none of our boundary lines changed. But she was helping us with all of that, you know, when it was, she was wonderful to work with.
Right.
So yeah, I think that she would listen to us and
Okay.
what we thought our concerns were. And we can, you know, get with planning and development and ask them, you know, in what areas over here in the Yellow Creek section of the east end of the county are you seeing more growth? Because they can tell that by building permits.
Right. I mean, I know we don't have a crystal ball. I'm just saying in preparing, it would ideally work out
Yeah.
where you don't have to end up with one of them having more growth and then splitting again. So, you know, I mean, if we have to, we have to, but ideally, you don't want to, is turn one into another Yellow Creek.
And I will tell you, we just went to a regional meeting last week and, you know, there are a lot of counties who don't have the problem that we have with the growth. I mean, they're consolidating precincts. And I don't think that's anything, you know, that we need to do. I like the majority of our precincts, you know, having between, you know, 1,000 to 2,000 voters. I feel like, you know, that's a pretty well-rounded number because a lot of those people, you know, vote early voting. They don't actually vote on election day. But Yellow Creek is always one of our precincts that does have a large turnout on election day.
I know that we've talked a little bit about consolidating possibly two out in the other end of the county, but I know that that's not, it's still being looked at, but.
Well, what we had talked about it, you know, consolidating Ludlow and Hinton, but that was before we replaced the roof on the building out there. We didn't realize that the county actually owned that building. So when we found out that the county did own the building,
Which building? Kent Hinton?
Ludlow.
Oh, okay.
When we found out that the county did own that building, then that was something that we were able to ask the county, you know, hey, can we replace this roof? Because this is a polling location for us, and they were able to do that, so.
But it was needing some work, and so that was one of the reasons we were talking about.
And
You know,
Ludlow,
consolidating Hinton and Ludlow.
talk about the growth of Pickens County. I mean, Ludlow was already up to 923 voters. I mean, that's a lot because I want to say about 4 years ago, Nellie had, you know, around 600 or 700.
Jasper is only like 500 registered voters behind Yellow Creek. Would you be thinking sometime in the future of?
No, Jasper won't ever split because Jasper's a municipal.
Okay.
Because of the, that's why I was thinking about other locations for them, because if you have enough traffic flow in and out of there, Jasper, where it is right now, is pretty tight with parking and in and out of the building even itself, because you just have that one small hallway. But it is something to discuss with the city of Jasper that we have to look at first too, I think.
Yeah, and again, not that we have a crystal ball, but the majority of our voters tend to turn out during early voting instead of election day, which makes the election day turnout a whole lot, you know, smaller.
Well, I will say that obviously there is a lot that goes into all of this, and we do need to come up with a plan. Obviously, we don't have anything that I'm aware of at this point to necessarily vote on. This is gonna be something that we're going to table. But in the meantime, I think that if you're looking for something from this board, I'm willing to at least say, go forward and get some locations locked down as long as it is what suits the need for moving these precincts, because the clock's ticking. I mean, we're already here in April, and like you say, we've got to get notices sent out. You've got to have everything locked in long before that. If we're gonna split a precinct, you've got Gina to get in touch with down there. I mean, it's time to make, and you've still got elections coming up to run. So I appreciate all the information that you've provided us tonight, and I would say keep moving forward with it, because we gotta have places, if the school system wants us to move out of their buildings, which I understand is the case, we've gotta do it.
Yeah.
Like, we have to have elections, and we have to have places for these elections to take place, so.
I'm curious, what was the reasoning for it? Ask us to leave. Security?
Security, yeah. A lot of the schools have been asking, because of security reasons and things that have happened, you know, all over the nation.
Yeah.
In November, school's always out, you know, so that's not an issue, but when the primaries are in May and there's all these special elections,
Right.
kids are actually in school, you know, when we're in there, and, you know, we try not to be disruptive to them, but we're also taking their facility away from them, and the gyms is primarily where they do their after-school programs. So, you know, they're having to move their after-school programs because we're in the gym, and you have people coming in and out all day long.
It's a security,
It makes
it's a big
sense.
security risk,
It makes sense.
unfortunately, with the voting there too.
And I'm fortunate that at least our superintendent, you know, had a discussion with me about it ahead of time, because there have been counties who their schools have just said, okay, we want you out by the next election. So I was glad that they, you know, at least let me prepare for it before, you know, they just said you've gotta be out. So they're working with us, and I'm thankful for that.
Any other thoughts,
Yeah.
suggestions? Yeah, what you got, Tara?
So I mean, we've talked about this in the past, but I really am concerned about Yellow Creek and that darn fire station, because I think it's a safety hazard. I mean, people park on the road, the parking there is very, very minimal. And of course, it's a fire station, and they've been called out to a fire in the middle of the election. And now and because of that, now they block off half the parking lot. So those people who used to park there can't park there anymore. So now they're parking up and down Yellow Creek Road. It's pitch dark when the precinct opens. It's pitch dark when it closes.
And
So
we
I
have
would
done some
really,
things to address that. One of the things that we did is we asked that they move the fire trucks out of the
Right.
bay. So they have started doing that. So that way if there is a fire, you know, they're not having to make people get out of line. We did purchase cones that go out to the precinct that say voter parking, to try to, because that is just an open parking lot with no markings. So to try to set lines of where voters can park, so that way they're not parking up and down the road. And then we did purchase the reflective vest for poll workers to wear in the morning and at night when they're putting out signs and picking them up. So that way if somebody does come down the road, so you know, we have done everything we could to address the situation and make it better. But I do think if we were to split the number of voters at that precinct, it wouldn't be, you know, as much at one time. It wouldn't be so many voters coming through, trying to find a place to park, having to park up and down the road. And I think that would help.
yeah, I mean, I think it would help too. But what I would encourage you to do is, if you look at those two churches, and if both of them are suitable for a precinct, maybe think about moving Yellow Creek, moving the half that would have stayed at the fire station, move them to the church that's
Okay.
right there on
Foothills.
53, and then move the other ones up there to Trinity, because I mean, it really is.
So split it and move both of them out of the fire station, is
Split
what
it
you're
and move
thinking?
it. Yeah, yeah. And I didn't go to Ludville this last time, but I mean, really, it was terrible. And I wondered, well, could we, I'm sorry, this is one of my surgery leftover things. Anyway, if we could combine Hinton and Leadville, cause the the Hinton facility is fabulous. And then you go up to Leadville and it's like, whoa. But anyway, just a thought.
We could have a board painting party.
As far as Yellow Creek, I'm completely in favor of splitting it. But just a question, does the county have any additional property behind the building or something they could lay some blacktop down and increase the parking?
I don't think so, because I think behind the building is residential.
I just
And there's
thought
a
that
little
might be a quick solution to help.
Yeah, no, I
I think there's a house right next to it.
No,
Or something.
This is
Yellow
Yellow
Creek,
Creek.
about Yellow
Oh,
Creek.
Yellow
I
Creek,
backed
my
up.
bad, my bad.
Yeah, right behind that is all residential, so I don't believe the county owns any additional property right there.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for the information, and again, go forward, let us know if there's anything that, any contacts or anything that you need. I know you're very resourceful, but in the event you are, just let us know.
And one of the things that Terry, I don't know that she knows this, but I did talk to you other board members about on election night. I was actually able to go out to all 12 of the precincts on election day. That's something I've never been able to do
Right.
on election day because I'm always in the office. And it was great because it's like I'm used to seeing, or my poll workers are used to seeing me in my environment, but I'm not used to seeing them in theirs. So I got a lot of feedback from them that I feel was very beneficial. And one of the things that one of the poll workers suggested was because the majority of the facilities that we use are in churches or, fire stations, and we're using their electricity. We're using, their toiletries, we're using their water, and none of our polling locations, charge us to use those. And that's almost unheard of with other counties. So they said that they thought it would be nice if we were to give a donation to each one of those precincts from the election board per election that we use, kind of just to help offset those costs for us using the facility. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we can necessarily give them a donation because it is taxpayer funds. But if you remember when we were
We'd have to tie
originally
it to,
talking about our polling place agreement, there was a dollar amount in there to use the facility and we put 0. It might be something that in the discussion that we're having going forward into 2026, if the board wanted to, we could vote on an amount to add into that polling place agreement as a leasing amount to use the precinct to give to those facilities. If we did $100 an election or $50 an election, but that would be in the agreement, and that might entice the owner or the manager of the building to keep allowing us to use it. If we gave something back instead of just taking the entire time that we were there, and I never thought about that. I've just always thought about how lucky we have been to be able to use our precincts at no charge. But whenever that poll worker suggested that, I was like, that's something that I'll present to the board, because I was like, I think you're onto something. So we could budget for that going into next year, if it was something that the board wanted to do. And like I said, this is just all discussion on the precincts. So it's something that we can bring up whenever we go to finalize that polling place agreement. If the board wanted to, we could make that change to it.
Yeah, because I think I'd be curious to know if any of the new locations that we're identifying as potentials would want us to actually pay
Yeah.
to. So I think, knowing a dollar amount that they may be asking would
Or
obviously.
knowing that if that's something the board wanted to do going into 2026, that's something we can say, well, we also, agree to
Yeah.
lease,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, or vice versa.
Yeah,
If there's
vice
somewhere
versa.
who's asking us, or if there's somewhere where we feel like it might be what puts us in their doors to be able to use it, I think we have to be open to that as a possibility. So. Okay. All right. I guess we will, table that then for later date when we have, actual locations and things that we need to, but you're gonna do homework, more homework and keep working on it and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I
I
wanna,
have one more question and I'm sorry. So if we split the precinct for Yellow Creek, are the deadlines the same as just moving the precinct? Okay, thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda, and I'm assuming Karen's gonna have a little bit for us on this too.
Well, I was
but-
telling her, I have not followed it as closely as I have in years past, because it's just,
it keeps
well,
changing.
it keeps changing.
Mhm.
And then there hasn't been as much support for certain ones.
Right.
So I was kind of almost waiting to see what actually gets passed and what gets signed by the governor. Now, there have been a couple that have already passed, so
Yeah.
like the probate judges will be becoming nonpartisan, but that takes a constitutional amendment, so that'll be a couple of years down the road. The one that passed, so the campaign finance disclosures and all that, the local will now be handled by the state, so that
And-
takes a lot off of the.
Yes, and that's the program that we purchased, to be able to do that, for the filers to give it to us electronically. We purchased that with Easy Vote. But this will not take into effect until 2027, so we still have 2 years that we're gonna be using that program.
It is still part of the whole package
Yes,
that we
still part
got
of the
too,
suite,
like
and we
you
use the
didn't.
areas of, the other areas of the suite.
Yeah,
Misty can tell you firsthand, she used the poll worker suite during this past election, and it was really easy because every day she went on the computer and just selected the poll workers that was going to be working for the next day and just sent them a text reminder that said, "Don't forget you work tomorrow." So, I mean, it's still very beneficial to us, but that was one of the reasons that we originally wanted to look into purchasing this suite, was because it allowed everything to be filed electronically through our office and then us file it with the state. And now this will take the responsibility off of
what bill
us.
number was that?
$199.
199, the one that they announced yesterday, okay, that passed, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that passed. So there's still, and there's kind of dual, I think the one that probably pass, if it passes, would be the HB 397. There's this Senate bill that almost matches it exactly. It's still, because they changed it, it's sort of like an omnibus bill where it was combined with a lot of stuff. So
That's the one that would take early voting from where we have it now and put it.
I think they took it out.
They did take that out, that's
They
one
took
of the
that out.
revisions, but that's the
Yeah.
one I was really concerned about last week that I emailed you about, because the way that they had it worded, it would make us put every satellite early voting location, it would make them put it back in the office of the registrar.
Yeah, that part, they could add it back in, but that part is gone. But my understanding is I heard that legislators of both parties, actually, there wasn't a majority to approve that anyway.
I don't know the
So-
size of like Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett's offices, but I know our office wouldn't be big enough, so I don't know how they would even handle it, but that's not our bailiwick, obviously, but
Yeah, so
that's,
I've heard
somebody better go do something.
that
Serious
there's not a
patient
majority to pass
Yeah.
that part of it, but
Okay.
some of the stuff in it would actually be moving the state election board from under the Secretary of State's purview to the state accounting office. It would codify like the time frame for the state election board to pass new rules. So they'd have to pass rules within 60 days or 60 days would be the earliest to the election.
Okay.
Or 30 days to a primary, unless it was an emergency. Let's see, what else did it change? It makes the independent candidates for certain offices, they don't have to do that petition type requirement. They would actually have an independent qualification period,
Okay.
just like you would for a party, but
Okay.
I'm assuming it's gonna be just like in the election office, rather than have to do that signature method. So that one was that. It would allow election superintendents to provide the list of electors at no cost, rather than requiring right now to go to the Secretary of State's office.
That was one of the rules they tried to pass last year too. Yeah.
But you don't have to either.
Right.
It gives you the option.
And just a little backstory on that, like, other states, like I think the state of Alabama charges like around $3,000 for their electors list. The state of Georgia doesn't charge,
It's like
but
$75.
$75. So I mean, it
And some states are free, but.
yeah, some states have it free, and that's the thing. Like, you know, it's not uniformed all over. Every state decides whether they want to charge for it or not. But that was a really big thing in the state election board hearings last year, leading up to the November election. Was there were people that felt like they shouldn't have to pay for that list.
This would withdraw the Secretary of State from Eric, that kind of list sharing thing, or similar type things. Although I think it would allow them to participate into some kind of joint agreements with other states and stuff like that. I don't know if that will stay in. Oh, drop boxes, if you have them, they'd have to be under video surveillance.
Ours already is.
That was another big one.
Did
Oh,
we
it would
increase that
also,
number for that, was a applicant?
We didn't have to because that rule was
Didn't
not
pass.
passed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
it would also, if you'll remember, it was a little controversy when some counties opened up their offices the weekend before the election to collect absentee ballots or have them dropped off. So it would actually set times that you could drop off absentee ballots, and then if you were going to be open on like the weekend before, you have to give like 14 days notice and publication.
So this is the
things like
omnibus
that.
that you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
So the need to observe the Dropbox 24 hours is back on the books?
Oh, I don't think that it is as detailed as what that rule was. That
So if it passes,
It's not 24, and it would have to start recording when the office closes.
and say we're under
remove
surveillance
the ban,
24/7
yeah.
anyways.
but it was an increase in memory that we were
But
buying,
we
right?
were looking at the increase in memory because they were wanting to keep it for a certain amount of time,
Okay.
which would require us to update, our storage.
And the increase in time to keep it is not part of this particular change?
I think.
If it is, then we're back looking at it
Yeah.
again, right? Okay, that's right.
I mean, right now, our memory is over 30 days. But I think this was requiring us that,
2 years or something.
Yeah, it was
It was 2
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah. I
and
don't know, this is just adding, I don't think anything got struck.
so a lot of
Yeah.
the rules that got threw out in court,
They're trying to
they're trying to
pass
attach
that. Gotcha.
Yeah.
to this bill to be passed.
So if you're gonna open up
You alright? Itchy eye?
like the weekend before,
And our office is not open to the public the weekend before. Like, we're there working, but we're not open to the public.
let's see. And I'm not sure how exactly this is gonna work there, because we already have like the deadline for postmarks, but the last version I saw was applying that deadline for postmarks to the Uwakava, and I'm not sure that they can do that, and I
Because
haven't
that's
really
federal.
looked at it
Yeah.
closely. Because when I saw that, my initial thought was like, I don't think they can do that, and I'm not I'm not even sure of the most recent version, like the last version I have is Friday, which was different from Wednesday's version.
Legislation ends on Friday, so they have time to still make changes
Yeah.
and try to get something passed, but.
It would allow municipalities could opt out of Saturday voting. So
Parts, all, none, some, who knows how much.
It adds in the areas for poll watchers, some under that rule that.
Yep.
Giving them
Yeah,
more
It's like he said, it seems like every rule
Yeah,
that
so,
ended up getting tossed is now in
They're
this bill.
trying to attach it to legislation.
Yeah, so the reports that they talked about, that was
Yep.
another rule that's added in. My understanding is at one point this version, it did have the hand count at each polling place
All that
location.
stuff was pulled basically
That's been
because
pulled.
it was too close to the election to make the changes, we all could.
But I mean, I think it's been pulled from this bill.
Okay.
My understanding, yeah, so the latest version that I have, I mean, it could get added back into the latest version I have, that was taken out.
And
Paper
tomorrow
kills
I'll go
matched.
and I will look up the latest version and I'll email it out just so that way you have it, but that doesn't mean it won't change again by Friday.
Yeah. And well, this one was updated on Friday even, I knew it had changed, but the online legislative one didn't have the most recent. I had to pull it off of Firefly, had it,
Mhm.
they had it, yeah, so
Okay.
it's one of the, I've just been like, we'll see what finally gets.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But it is interesting that, like you say, it's just about every one of those rules that they tried to pass is now
Yeah.
in
Right.
some form or fashion been tried to be attached to that bill.
Well,
So-
and part of the, I mean, reason why there was a lot of opposition from different counties was because it was so last minute.
Mhm.
I mean, it may not have seemed last minute, but when you're already talking about absentee ballots and everything else, like, you've already trained your poll workers and all
Yeah.
that, so.
But in
And I actually didn't look to see what the effective date would be on these. I don't know if it's July 1st or January 1st.
And I think that they're still trying to look at the effectiveness of each one of these provisions too in this bill, in all honesty. So, the support that it has, or non-support, I guess we should say, so. We'll have to see what way they shake out, but thanks for sharing what is going on
I think
downtown.
something will pass with this one, but
Right.
if more gets taken out or added in, I don't know.
Which
Right.
version of it?
Yeah,
Because then, there's a Senate bill, and I'm drawing a blank on that number,
okay,
that is almost the same, but not quite, but this is the one, the House bill is the one
That's got
that I
more
think
traction.
that's
Okay.
actually,
gotcha. Well, see if you find the same thing and send it, that'd be great.
I'll do that.
Stacy.
So, what about the executive order? President Trump's executive order with regard to elections. Have
The
you
QR codes.
decided, thought about how that would impact us in
I have
Georgia?
not really looked at it, I know there's been lawsuits filed against it,
Already,
but,
okay, good. Okay.
and I haven't heard of any guidance yet from the Secretary of State, so.
Okay.
But there was a decision in that Curling case, that Curling versus Raffensperger case that had a trial about, 14 months ago?
Mhm.
Yeah.
She basically dismissed it, saying that the plaintiffs didn't have standing to sue.
Which that was Marilyn Marks with Good Coalition. That was the, about the voting equipment.
The Dominion voting machines, that they had the trial on, but the judge issued the order yesterday.
Okay.
And if I get any news articles like that pops up about that, I'll forward those as well.
Assuming they're going to appeal it.
Fair enough. Legal
Yeah, I
maneuvers,
just-
legal maneuvers
I
is how
know,
it
I
goes.
just heard
Yeah.
about it this morning, cause I don't know what time yesterday it came out, but.
Right. All right, well, thank you, ladies, appreciate that. So, next item on the agenda is staff comments. Do we wanna let Misty start? You have anything?
I'm good.
Misty, the last time, just so you know, this is Terry.
She
You did make,
They're already voting.
Because-
voted.
Because Terry wasn't at our certification meeting, so I just wanna make sure. So, okay. You guys know each other. My work here is done. Moving on.
Our staff will be attending statewide training coming up in April. We'll be going to Paulding County for a couple days for that.
Who's going? Just you and Misty?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a couple weeks to get our office back in order and we start voting again in 8 weeks. So I do not see a need to have board members work the lunch shifts, to alleviate poll workers for lunches, because I don't think that we're gonna be that busy. But I will be reaching out to board members, about election night assignments and what that's gonna look like. Terry, I know you were at the certification meeting, but, I'm happy to announce that we had every single precinct. I set a goal for them when I went around to each one of them, and I told them, I was like, I want every precinct to be in the office and reported by 9 o'clock. And the last one came in at 8:52, but that was still before 9 o'clock, and I was at home in my bed.
Go ahead.
I was at home
No,
in
I'm not
my
gonna
bed
guess.
by 9:30, and that's the first time ever. So I would just like to thank my poll workers and my poll managers for, doing such a good job and meeting that goal. I'm gonna set another goal for them for this next election. And I know I said it during the certification meeting, but it takes so many people to make elections happen. And our board members, help us out so much. The guys at the rec center have been phenomenal about, housing us during early voting and helping us with our needs. Our public works guys who move our equipment are amazing. Our staff has done just a wonderful job. Even Roger.
I like how she had even Roger.
But I seriously, could not do it without, it's takes all parts of the train to put it in motion, and I'm just, very thankful that we have such a good team, and, we had another successful election because of it. We reached out to our poll workers this week and, thanked them for the job that they did during the election, but also just to give them a reminder that we're signing them up for the next election. So that's what we're doing right now. So
Good deal. All right. Next item is board comments. Becky,
I have nothing.
Rick,
Great, thank you.
Terry?
I just want to thank everybody for covering for me so I could go see my new grandbaby at the last election. I appreciate it very much, guys.
You'll repay us one day.
Ed?
Yeah, I have a couple things. First of all, I want to apologize to my colleagues for going to the Capitol unannounced. That was wrong. And I'm sorry, I should have handled that very differently. I did it wrong. It was a very small thing to clarify that the supervisor could request a hand count, not must, but may, after the election in case, if there was some discrepancy. But then there was an out at the end of it that if it interfered with all your other work, don't do it. Gabrielle was in favor of it, so forth, so on. But anyway, I should not have handled it the way I did. I was invited when your state representative calls your party chairman and they call you and say, please come help us. And I went to help them, but I did it completely wrong.
And I just want to say, Gabrielle was not in favor of it because Gabrielle reached out to me and asked me to reach out to the legislators. It wasn't that they weren't in favor of it; they wanted clarification because of the way it was worded, left it open to interpretation too much. So some of the members of Gabrielle did reach out to me and asked me to reach out to the legislators that we had that were behind the bill, and I did, and I expressed the fact that Gabrielle did not have an issue with the bill itself. It was just we asked for more clarification.
Right, because your counterpart from Cobb County was there, Joseph Kirk from
Bartow
Bartow was
County,
there.
and Joseph was one of the ones that asked me to reach out to legislation about it.
Okay, well, they were in favor of it, as they told me at the meeting. So I just wanted to make that clear. I apologize, I can't unring that bell. I will not be doing that again.
Well, appreciate.
Thank you.
And on that note, as you all have received the email, I'm gonna say it again for just the plain and simple fact that I know that I go back on the record as another reminder that the only two people who are allowed to speak on behalf of the entire board is either Stacy or myself. And I'm 9 times out of 10, we're gonna let Stacy do it anyhow, because I don't want to be the person doing it. So I do appreciate you acknowledging that. It was not handled appropriately. And in the future, that's all I ask, is that if you are invited by, it doesn't matter, whoever, to speak regarding elections in Pickens County, before you go and do that, you speak with Stacy and or I about it. It is that simple. You have the option to go downtown any day of the week you want to and speak about anything you want to. Just do not say that you are there on behalf of the board or with the board, representing the board, and use we or what have you. What you did say would have been easily assumed that we all did it. Had you said that it's my opinion or my position and took the we out of it, nothing would have ever been said.
Well,
So that's it, and we've had issues in the past prior to you being on the board. When we had the issue, as was mentioned about hand counting ballots, that was prior to you, it was prior to me even being on the board. I came on the tail end of it. And we didn't have firsthand knowledge. It would have been Becky and even maybe Terry that had more firsthand knowledge about how that whole thing came about. So like, the hand counting thing, like I don't even want to go back there, revisit it, that whole issue, the legal mess that we had of it, and reaching out to Stacy or like I say, any one of us would have probably helped make things be a little bit clearer on that. So, but we did have several instances after that, prior to that, where other people on the board were speaking on behalf of the board. We even had a news article done, and we're not going back there. Like, that's not a road I want to travel down. So, that's why it's important to me that it be addressed, and I do again appreciate your apology and want to make sure that I'm clear. And if there is any question, feel free to ask me, ask the attorney if you want to even know for clarification going forward.
And there's always too, is the option of like, if all of you, the majority feel strongly about something and want someone to go down to the Capitol to speak on behalf of the board, to have a vote on it at a meeting and say, we want to get this across, let's vote and send someone down there. Like, that's always, an option too.
Exactly, so.
Or, to agree to sign a
Right.
letter or anything.
So I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that traveling down this road forward, that we all have a clear understanding, and that's all I'm asking.
And I will say, just for the record, the head of the GOP, Chris Moore, he did call the day before and let me know that they were going down to the Capitol, to speak on behalf of the bill. But I didn't even know that the bill was, being introduced until that phone call. So I wasn't familiar with the bill. Our local representative was introducing the bill, and it was about elections, but I just wasn't aware of it. And he called to give me the heads up, and then that's when I looked into, what the bill was. And, there wasn't, like I said, there was no problem with the bill itself, other than Gabrielle, asked that they clarified a little bit more. But then that bill didn't make crossover. So it was one of those bills that could have been attached to, one of these omnibus bills, but I think in place of it, it was something else.
And I think it can
still.
it's still quote, alive for
Yeah.
the upcoming.
For the upcoming, for
Yeah.
And
next.
that's when I reached out to, our House and Senate representatives. That's what I said, before, I said, I know this didn't make crossover, but before it gets attached to another bill, going forward, I was like, and Gabrielle even provided some points of clarification that they would like. So I provided that to our representatives as well. So both of them, received that email.
Right. Good deal. So hopefully this ends this discussion. So, and on that note, public comments? Any thoughts? No? Just sat here and enjoyed us all night long so far, huh? Good deal. All right. Last item on the agenda. is to adjourn this meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, any additional discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank y'all.